Alright, we're live. Morning, everyone. This is episode 196, being recorded on whatever the hell the date is today. Yeah, Chill will do this properly, obviously. Our guests today are Bill, who you no doubt know very well, and Andrew, who you'll have heard in an interview a few episodes back. We'll be starting to roll in a little bit. We're just waiting for Andrew to make sure he's good in the new setup.
Can you hear me again now?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just up my input volume just a little and everything will finally be fixed.
Alright, let's do this.
Alright, I'm just checking
Bill,
the OotiniCast Twitch.
Are you recording?
Yes.
Chill.
I am.
I am recording. Just read.
And Andrew, are you still recording?
I am.
Alright, we're good.
Okay, I just want to wait till this. Okay.
Oh, let me
That's
just...
good. Let me test the sound. Oh, actually thinking.
It is so weird. I've not been able to connect to the chat server in weeks.
Hmm.
The OotiniCast.com/live one?
Yeah. It just stalls on connecting the server and never lets me in.
Weird.
Is that using the page or using the separate link?
The page.
Right at the top of the show notes, you'll see chat link. There's a link there to open in its own window.
Okay.
Try
Try
that. Because that sort of skips the embedded version.
Okay, yeah, the Twitch seems to be looking fine. I've got the little chat room going here.
Yes, that's me.
Same, just connecting.
Alright.
Okay.
Yeah, so my Twitch handle is TO2260. 2260 is the year the Great War came upon us all. And if you know about Babylon 5, you'll know what that's about. Alright. Okay, anything else to do? Andrew, you pretty good?
I think I'm good. I'm seeing actual waves on Audacity now.
Woohoo! As long as they don't swamp you.
One moment, I think I want to change one thing here real quick.
My one goal for today was to not be super quiet when I listened back to it like I was when we did the interview.
Oh, I thought I boosted your volume.
Oh, you did. Once you fixed it, it was fine.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I just don't want to make you have to completely fix me this time.
I appreciate that, believe me. Last minute change.
Yep. Last minute editorial change. I'll have to remember to change the other spreadsheet as well.
Yep.
All right.
Excuse me. I'm hoping this won't be a long one.
Since we're starting like 10
The
minutes.
show notes.
Yeah, I know. If I can skip something, I will. So,
It sounds like we're all good to go, though.
yes, sir. Let's rock
All
and or
right.
roll.
All right, going in 5. Hi, and welcome to the OotiniCast. If money is all that you love, then that's what you'll receive. This is episode 196, being recorded on Wednesday, March 18th, 2015. I'm your host, Chill, with our producer and co-host, Tio. Hi, Tio.
Hey, guys.
And our guests today are, in fact, economic gurus. We've got Andrew, Swotor Economics, and we've got Bill back. So, Andrew, we did the interview a few weeks back, but remind everyone what you do and what your site's all about and all that good stuff.
Sure. I started a blog at swtoreconomics.com, and it started out as my collection of spreadsheets and random thoughts, and it turns out that a lot of you actually liked those things. So now I'm constantly trying to come up with new things to make spreadsheets about.
Awesome. Yep, and you've been putting a lot of videos up on YouTube as well. That's also SWOTOR Economics, as I recall.
Yes, everything's basically SWOTOR Economics.
Beautiful. All right, well, obviously we'll be talking money a little later on, but what you do like recently, like this week?
The last few nights, I've actually done some PvE content for the first time in a little while. I did some story mode, Temple of Sacrifice, with one of my guild's progression groups that wanted to do a quick story mode at the end of their night, and someone had to drop out of a DPS role. So that was fun for me because I don't really do anything like that normally, and they were all quite well versed in all of the mechanics and managed to coach me along. And then last night I did hard mode Manon Flashpoint with some more folks from the guild, and that was the first time that I had gone back and done a hard mode Flashpoint in a while.
Yeah. How'd that go?
It went well. We didn't run into any issues. I don't know if that was because we were doing the content that well or if it was the changes that they've been making lately, but
Right.
It felt good nonetheless. And then I actually got a chess piece for my healer that I took and managed to reverse engineer the resolve armoring.
Nice.
So that was fun.
Nice. Yeah, that is nice. Very cool. And I understand you're working on some projects for your site as well?
Yes. Yeah, I kind of took a step back a little bit from the volume of content that I was trying to put out initially so that I could put some time into building the types of systems and databases that I probably should have done up front if I had realized how well it was going to go. And I'm finally finishing that process, and I should be in a good spot here in the next week or so to get back to a quicker pace of putting out new content. So I'm excited for that.
Very cool. All right. And let's see. Anything else from this week then?
Oh, I did buy a ton of decorations. So I put a lot of money in a lot of people's credit balances via the GTN. I had sold a bunch of things over the past few weeks, just odds and ends that I had accumulated. And then I put about probably 20 million credits back into the system, buying up decorations, and I bought pretty much every Datacron decoration that was listed on Jedi Covenant at one point, and
nice,
then
yeah.
some bigger ones as well. So it was fun.
That's cool. Any unusual economic activity that you've noticed the last few days?
One interesting thing, at least on Jedi Covenant, and I've just started the process of going and looking at some of the other servers on this, is the dark projects that are quite... There's a lot of effort that goes into creating a single dark project in the crafting process, but they're selling actually, at least on Jedi Covenant, for very small amounts of money relative to the effort that goes into crafting them. I've been picking them up for less than 200,000 in the last few days. And for something that has so many stages to craft, that's nothing. And so I was able to, for less than 1 million credits, I picked up the Defender Starship as a decoration that takes 5 dark projects and 5 MK3 Universal prefabs. So that was very cheap.
Awesome. All right. That sounds awesome. And Bill, how about your week? What you been up to?
Well, what have I been up to? I've been up to this, that. I started off by getting yelled at by Snave. I don't know. I went out on Twitter and said I was bored. He yelled at me, telling me not to be bored, that there's still stuff to do. So I tried to level my power tech then, because I have 1060s.
Mm-hmm.
To be fair to Snave, I don't have 1660s yet. So I figured I'd start on my power tech, but I ran into the same bug that I ran into the very first day of 3.0. I got through Invasion of Tython Flashpoint, completed it solo, went to turn it in, went through the conversation, and then it didn't ever complete. So I still have the mission to complete the Invasion of Tython, but I can no longer do it solo because it's crediting me having completed it solo. So it happened to me on my first character, and there was not much I could do about it. At least now that they've added it to Group Finder, I can try to wait for it to pop as a normal
Oh, okay.
4-man. But I haven't done that, so it kind of came to a halt the first day because I just got stuck and didn't want to wait and queue for it. So then I turned on to my PvP, and I PvP on the operative mainly.
Okay.
But I don't have a manly beard, so I heal on my operative. But honestly, I'm getting turned off by the gear grind a little bit. This has been the 4th iteration of gear grinding from scratch up 2 levels. It's not as bad as the first time with the random chest of Battlemaster gear, and I literally got 4 helmets in a row because it was completely random. But it is, it really turns me off to have to grind out the thousands and thousands and thousands of ranked comms to get there.
Yeah.
Without being able to play in ranked matches, really, because now I have the fear of being reported as trolling for showing up not having full PvP gear in ranked. So it's kind of like I don't want, with all of talk about what they're looking for from griefing and trolling and ranked, if I'm not rocking a full set, I don't necessarily want to go in and then try to build up the comms even faster and ranked.
Right.
So I go back to my normal daily grind of playing the market. It's been slow lately. I've noticed a precipitous drop. It's been slow. It normally, I mean, we've now crossed to 106 days since 3.0 launched. So
Awesome.
a lot of the crafting, it goes down day by day by day by day. So augment kits are at pretty much lows they've been at. Augments are at lows. A lot of the purple materials are at lows. I'm having a hard time lowering my prices, getting okay with doing that, but I'm going to have to start doing it because I can't sell anything because I'm afraid to list it at lower prices, and they're not rebounding at all.
Right.
So it does seem like a lot of the demand has dried up out there. I've gone from, I was easily clearing at the peak 2 to 3 million credits a day. I normally average about 1 million credits a day, and I'm down below 500,000 a day right now. It's just, the demand is just drying up. I still am running probably 500 to 600 items listed at any given time, but they're just not selling. Nothing, even stuff to where there's a lot of decorations I have out there, and I'm the only person selling them. And they're not selling.
They're still not moving, huh?
Nope.
Okay. Interesting.
So, you know, whether that's a population issue or there's just no money in the game right now, or what it is, stuff's not moving. So it's been kind of frustrating. So I turned and worked on, I've been raiding on my Sage.
Okay.
And I went to work kind of on my rotation this week and trying to get it up. So I was parsing at the beginning of the week. I've only got 2 pieces of 198. I've got the full 6-piece with 192. And I was parsing about 3550. And I keep reading everywhere that people are parsing 4,000, 4,200 in 192s. So I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing wrong.
Okay.
So I went and I worked on it, built it up to 3,800. But that's actually, I've kind of buried the lead. I'm running a balance spec, not TK.
Okay.
Which is kind of like running in a race, a marathon with one leg, I guess. It is the, other than the Sentinel right now, it is the lowest. It's the lowest parsing range spec, and Sentinel's about the only thing that is lower than it is on the best parse in the world.
Right.
They are getting a small buff on the PTS right now, so I did copy my character over and try that out. I did manage on the PTS then to break 4K. That's the first
Still
time
not.
I've been able to do that.
And you're going to stick with balance?
I actually switched to TK, and I worked at it and worked at it. What's funny is I used to play TK, switch to balance, switch back and forth. I can't match my output in TK that I can with balance. It just fits my style better, whatever it is. I don't manage my procs well enough is really what it is. I know what that is, but I haven't unlocked the secret to getting what probably I should be at 42 to 4500 in TK. Okay. I'm still between 36 and 38. Just haven't unlocked the secret of it. I've watched videos, I've read every guide out there, and I just can't seem to get through what it is. That brings me to the PTS. I've been on 5 different days this week, and every single time I've been on the PTS, I was the only person on the PTS in the entire server. So it's kind of disconcerting to me because while I am getting, the balance is getting a small buff. It's about 3.75 to 4.25% theory crafting wise damage buff.
Okay.
The bigger problem is they're nerfing the Force Storm or Force Quake.
Yep.
Right.
That's really big, and I don't have a way, because Force Quake doesn't come into play in the balance rotation at all whatsoever. And realistically, it shouldn't be part of the TK rotation, but it is being used as a single target as part of TK, which is what they're trying to remove it from the single target rotation, which is right.
Just like they did for flyby for snipers and so on.
Exactly right. But what they did was they basically ham-fisted solutioned it and just nerfed it across the board, which nerfs it for balance as well. So that becomes really hard.
I see. As opposed to doing something that would affect the talents of the TK tree, so that would only affect that, but not hurt the balance. Okay.
Right. So while I'm getting a buff to my single target damage and my DPS is going up, overall, realistically, when we get into fights, my DPS is going to drop, especially on ad heavy fights, Malafar, and I'm just not going to Underlurker, especially. It's because so much of my damage is coming from the ads, and from that, I'm actually going to be doing less damage, even though my single target damage is getting a buff. So it's frustrating that, I know you guys talked about last week the John Jaranowski post of we're reading everything, we're taking it into consideration, we're not going to comment on every post, but we're listening. But then there's a lot of opinions out there in the sage feedback that this is not a way to go. These are not there's a lot of constructive ideas of how to fix it better just to affect TK and not both. But there's been no response, and now they're taking the PTS down without anybody kind of coming forward saying, we hear you, and that's it. I understand that they may not have time to sit and comment on every single thing, but it's frustrating not to know what they're thinking when they make the changes, and all the feedback is in an echo chamber where everybody's just yelling at the clouds, and we have no idea what that means.
Right.
So that's where that stands. I'm hopeful that maybe they'll take some of that back, because there is, like I said, a lot of really constructive feedback in that. I've seen the others, the Shadow Assassins that are being nerfed as well. There's been concern about, and we'll see what happens. I don't know. Other than that, I'm going to Celebration. So I've been getting ready for that. That's actually like 3 weeks away. I leave for that now. So I'll be attending the Cantina event. So
Awesome.
Eric, I'm coming for you. You might want to, if you're not watching video, you might want to fire it up and see what I look like so you'll know when I'm coming. If anybody has questions, please get them to me. I'm happy to talk about anything. So get any questions you have. I've got some of my own that I'm gonna try to get some real answers to, and we'll see what we get.
Very cool.
Other than that, last thing is I hit 2 big milestones this week. I crossed 4,500 hours of played time.
That is a lot.
That's 168 full 24-hour days. So that's a problem. And I crossed 250 million credits for the first time. So normally I spend my money. I don't build up. I know I said at one time I panicked when I hit 75 million. I normally don't go above 150. I usually stay in that range between 75 and 150, but the only thing I've been spending money on lately is unlocks. So I've now basically been buying weekly operation passes, weekly flashpoint, weekly stuff like that, and I've bought every unlock possible to potentially stop subscribing and see how viable it is to be able to do that. We'll see.
Just free with the free-to-play unlocks. Very cool.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we'll be looking forward to your report.
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually myself stay between 75 and 150 myself, only my number usually ends in 1,000.
Yeah.
Not million. All right, awesome. Tio, how about your week?
Let's start with rating, as we always do. Now, I missed out on day one due to reasons, and so the other guys went ahead and did a story mode run. They were actually delayed, according to Bill's report, based on people patching and problems with the patch. It was a fairly meaty one, and so it did take a while if people hadn't pre-patched. And Pears apparently had some computer troubles, Bill?
Yeah, he had said that it basically crashed him when he was trying to unload, and he couldn't do anything, and it took him a while to get it sorted out, but he finally got in.
All right. So anyway, because they didn't have much time, they did the clear of Ravager story mode and 16-man Malafar. Then on day 2, when I was there, we cleared the rest of Temple of Sacrifice, and then we did Malafar and Sparky on hard mode. I guess we can pretty much say we have those guys on farm at this point. That's pretty consistent. And then we had some more goes at Bulo, the second boss in Ravagers on hard mode.
Right.
And yeah, I think the consensus now is
guy. Yeah, he's the weapons sales guy, kind of.
the damage going out is crazy.
It is.
Presumably the damage is avoidable, but we're not avoiding it properly. So hopefully everyone will have watched a few videos to get a feel for, or ideas at least, for what they're doing wrong. Something that one of the riders, Suki, sent around yesterday was a link to a Reddit post that talked through the mechanics, and it seems that one key thing is that when the ads come out, the guys you can distract using the barrels, when they appear is either on a timer, or if you can push the boss's DPS sufficiently, they'll come out earlier. And thus, if you don't hit the boss hard enough, you don't get his health down far enough, the ads appear after the first mass barrage.
Right.
And that can screw you up royally, because you really do need that mass barrage to kill them, otherwise things just get real messy. Yeah. So anyway, that's something for us to try. Tomorrow we'll probably just do the story mode clears just to gear up Chill's Gunslinger, who is joining us this week, which we'll talk about. And then back to hard modes. We may even give Sword Squadron, second boss. That's the 2 walkers in Temple of Sacrifice who go on hard mode. We'll see. We'll see what we feel like. I also gave the Riders a hand on Monday night. They also took down Malafar and Sparky on hard mode and had a few goes at Bulo as well. So that was good. So the random riders are right up with us now. Hopefully we can get a boss down, but they may beat us, but we'll see. Good to have that healthy competition. Now, outside of raiding, I did start to level my Gunslinger and ran into exactly the same issue that Bill described. I did the Korriban incursion, finished it. I made the mistake, I think, of logging out at that point. It didn't come back to it to continue the story until the next day or something. And it was as if I'd never done it. I went in to talk to the mission givers, and they basically said, go and do Korriban Incursion again. So, and yeah, it's not solo, just like Bill was saying. So, yeah, I've got to do it 4-man or get someone to carry me through it. So instead, frustrated with that, I switched to my operative, who actually had done Forged Alliances, and he's about 56 and a half. So I'll just take him through, just start on Rishi. Other than that, real life is keeping me busy, jobs, houses, that kind of thing. But I did want to mention, I have finished reading Heir to the Jedi, one of the latest novels in the new canon, which features a first-person perspective from Luke Skywalker. It's set just after A New Hope, before Empire Strikes Back, and it starts to explain just how he developed a few extra force powers. For example, you may recall in Empire Strikes Back when he's trapped by the Wampa in the cave. You know, it's ice to the ceiling, and he actually reaches out and pulls his lightsaber out of the snow. That's pretty much the first time we ever see any kind of telekinetic force power in the movie.
It's before he meets Yoda. So
yes, absolutely.
Definition.
So the book, from his point of view, does kind of explain that. The story itself is just a kind of a series of random adventures almost. There is an arc, but yeah, it's not that epic, but it's kind of cool just to see it from his point of view. I can't say I like the ending that much, but your mileage may vary. Yeah, okay. So yeah, I mean, it's canon, so it's all background. All this stuff is leading towards The Force Awakens, so it is probably worth keeping up with if you possibly can. Anyway, one more thing. They did mention interdictor cruisers. These are the things that have the gravity projectors that can be used to project a mass shadow, which will pull a starship out of hyperspace if the route that they're traveling in overlaps with that mass shadow that's generated. Now, this, I believe, is the first time it had actually been mentioned in a source which is, by definition, canon. Interdictors were used extensively in KOTOR and in games. They were in Star Wars X-Wing, believe it or not. X-Wing, and obviously Grand Admiral Thrawn in that series by Timothy Zahn, they referred to them, but finally, they are actually canon. Anyway, that's my week. Over to you, Chill.
All right, yeah, well, I did get my gunslinger up to 60 and worked on gearing for operations. I'm above 178 on everything thanks to comms and a bit of legacy smuggling and crew skills and the GTN and this and that and the other. So
you do mean above 186?
Well, yeah, above the 178s and stuff that you get, from the questing and so on. So it's all like 186 and some 192, and I think I have 198.
Okay.
So. Yeah, so the reason for the gunslinger is I was doing the Merc before that, but she was still in her 40s. Rub decided to stick with the Shadow DPS, and so we still needed the ranged, and so we after talking it over with you, went with the gunslinger. So got it, like I say, got her up to 60, did most of the leveling on stream, which was fun, and I actually took a chance and I went by the Yurishi datacrons, and they happened to be opened from someone else, which is not always the case anymore. They were locked open for a little while, but that's no longer the case. But if you go and check, sometimes they will just be open because someone has been there recently. And so I managed to get that one, and I also dinged 60 exactly by finishing the Revan mission at the end of the story arc. Which
Very
was
nice. Perfect timing.
Cool. It was perfect timing. No extra grinding needed. That was great. Then I also, sort of in relation to getting ready, went through and got every datacron that I could, including the McKeb one, but I still need the fleet one on this character, so I have to do that one. But everything else, I've got all the endurance and cunning and aim. It's all really good. And I've always been sort of the marksman's sharpshooter, the left side tree for the gunslinger, and a lot of hard casts and so on. That was previous, but I have switched over to the dirty tricks, the dot spec on the right tree, and I'm enjoying it a lot. It's also more mobile. Although I mean there is a hard cast that's very important to it, but a lot of the other abilities you can be doing on the run, which is good. And damage is okay, given the level of gear I have. I was parsing around just over 3,000 on the test dummy, so it's looking pretty good, and hopefully, as I keep practicing, it'll get even better. So I'm looking forward to trying that tomorrow, which will be our first day with her in the operation.
Particularly on Underlurker, it'll be good to see whether that mobility you're getting from that discipline actually does a trick.
Yeah, absolutely. And dot spreading and all that good stuff. So.
Yeah, I might switch back. If you can make it work, I might switch back to my gunslinger then, because that's why I switched up if it was Underlurker.
Okay.
I will keep an eye out for that then. And yeah, because of the legacy smuggling from last week, and I do have 3 of the 6-piece, so I'm getting there on the bonuses as well.
We'll get you the rest this week.
Yeah, I believe so. So that'll be good. And I'm really enjoying her. She's always been one of my favorite characters. I PvP'd with her a lot, like in 1.0 era, at the level 50 era. Kind of got away from her since then, but she's just a really good character, and I really like her. I also like the voice actress for her. It does a good job. So good enough on that. Let's go on to the tip of the week. And we have a couple of them. First one I'll take, it's from Sarlon, aka Darth Nox of the Shadowland server. My tip of the week is pretty basic, but new players may not know. If you have an item that you want to transfer to another character in your legacy, drop it in your legacy hold instead of mailing it to them. And this will cut down the wait time from mailing all your items.
Well, the obvious point is there is no wait time if you're mailing between characters in the same legacy. It is immediate. But you are saving the credit cost. It's like 5 credits.
10 credits, 5 credits, yeah, it's not a lot.
Per item or whatever, yeah. So, but yeah, it's way more convenient just to stick it into your legacy bank. That's certainly how I move Treeks bound to legacy gear between my various characters. I should just farm up more sets, but yeah.
All right.
And the second tip is from Jason R, also known as @Reindeer86 on Twitter. Not sure if your computer or laptop can run SWTOR, need a more portable way to play, or need to play without the gaming laptop prices. SWTOR runs just fine on a Surface Pro 3, which is their tablet thingy running Windows 8. There's actually several variants, and I asked him which one he's got, and he's got the one with an i5 CPU and 128GB SSD. So that's like the lower end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And is apparently running fine, which is kind of cool.
That is cool.
That might be the best alternative for the crafting app that everyone wants.
Yeah, that's true. If you have access to Wi-Fi, pretty easy to do that. That's slick. All right, well, by a random allotment, the winner is Sarlon of the Shadowland server. So congratulations, Sarlon. You're the winner of an M8R3 Droid Pet Code, or a Tonfun code if you prefer, courtesy of BioWare, and an OotiniCast provided Cartel Market Pack from the latest shipment. If you'd like a chance to win the same, please send your tips to OotiniCast@gmail.com by next Tuesday. And that will bring us to the holo feed. Tio?
There is a scary amount of news this week, but hopefully we'll get through it reasonably quickly.
Okay.
Just before I do that, I'm going to change the access to it so people who are watching live can actually see it. Alright. Firstly, Bounty Contract Week is now live and will be until Tuesday server reset next week. So it's back, and as we talked about last week, it's not really predictable when exactly it will be, but it'll be once a month-ish. Just can't really predict which week it'll be, but they're going to work on that. So anyway, that's up. Pretty much no change as far as I know. Game update 3.1.1. We went through it in detail last week. It was actually deployed on Thursday morning as expected. They did add a few more changes, and these were the real exploit fixes. So apparently, well, and other fixes. Terror from Beyond, if anyone's still doing that. The data cores no longer spawn infinite droids. Now, there's no explanation of how it could get into that state, because the way that usually works is you burn down the data cores as they're just trash as you're going through Terror from Beyond, and if until you kill them, the droids keep spawning. So it implies that it just kept spawning anyway, which would be fantastic. So anyway, that's fixed if you're still doing that content. Now, Marco Car summon droids can no longer be salvaged. This was in the Battle of Rishi, one of the first pair of bosses in there. Legacy of the Ricarda, one of the existing tacticals and hard modes. They added additional points of collision in the area around the Infinite Army prototype to prevent the avoidance of boss mechanics. Now, I'm assuming that's the one where it's a big flat plane. I think it's the second boss, where you fight the guy and then the droids appear in patches. And about 3 or 4 times, depending on your DPS, throughout the fight, and it looks like they fixed that. Seems that there was a way to cheese it by kind of moving out of the area somehow.
It is a big open area. I'm not surprised that people found ways to cheese it.
Yeah.
Although it's really not that bad. I mean, maybe
I don't know why you'd bother.
Yeah, I haven't tried it in hard mode, but.
Oh, in hard mode it's even easy. Well, it's just as easy. It's a true Legacy of the Ricarda is the easiest of the hard modes, and that fight is kind of a joke.
Okay.
Directive 7, an old flashpoint. Mentor Assassin Beta no longer drops loot before all of the assassin droids are defeated. If you happen to be doing Directive 7, I haven't done that for ages. Now, that would make a nice hard mode, actually. An up-to-date hard mode. And finally, in items and economy, the following crafted Cybertech items have had their values reduced significantly to be more in line with other crafted items. And these are the droid parts, that like the secondary parts, primary parts, and motors, cores, and the sensor units. The Frasium ones of the various kinds, frontline and ordnance. Now, the fact that these were actually... Say again?
Sorry, the values meaning the stats that they give, or what?
The vendor price. This was actually sent to us as a tip of the week a while ago. And rather than read it out on the show, I actually queried BioWare and said, is this kind of intended? Because it doesn't sound right. And they said, no, bad. So we didn't tell anyone, and they said they would fix it, and they finally have.
Okay.
So
I saw the... Yeah. Okay, so I saw the email, but it didn't make it on the show. Okay.
So the way it worked was you could actually buy up the mats off the GTN or whatever, craft the things, and then just vendor them, and you would be making a substantial profit. So yeah, that's not intended. So anyway, it's fixed now. Can't do that anymore.
Okay.
I won't ask Bill whether he knew about that.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, Rishi Spaceport. If you happen to be in Rishi and you land there, like come with a speeder or just zone in, you can find yourself with a missing floor. And it looks kind of weird. I included a screenshot of my character. I found this very disconcerting. At first I thought it was just me. I thought my client had screwed up, but it seems that this is affecting lots of people, if not everyone.
Oh,
and
definitely me.
You can you can run into trouble because you can't see where everything is, and you can run into stuff and get lost, and it's terrible.
Well, yeah, exactly. I got to the point in the story where you're done with like the first major land mass, and you have to go over to the island, and the way you do that is via the taxi, not a droid in this case, it's actually a Jawa.
Yeah.
Everything around the Jawa is invisible, which makes the entire thing like a puzzle where you have to figure out, okay, where exactly was the ramp on this thing? Is it directly in front of him, or is it to his left a little? And I fell a couple times. Yeah, it was a pain.
You make it sound like a feature.
It's a bit of an additional challenge. I mean, it is a game after all. But,
yes, the taxi boss challenge was tricky for sure.
So just to be clear, the floor is there. You just can't see it. Right. So yeah. Anyway, Tate responded and he said he ran into it himself on the weekend. That's great, and they'll be having a look at it to see. I would expect an emergency patch at some point, rather before the next game update, to get that fixed because it's kind of nasty. But as of this recording, it remains extant.
All right. Fortunately, it is mostly right in that one area at the front of Rishi. There's very few other spots where anything disappears. Fortunately, like for instance, the the bridges in the jungle area don't disappear. Fortunately, or else that would have been really nasty.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right, next PTS, the 3.1.2 was on the PTS. It has now been closed.
Mm-hmm.
So, yep, if you've had your chance now to have a look at it, presumably they'll be opening it again for, well, I guess 3.2, Game Update 3.2. We're not really expecting a 3.1.3, but anyway, they didn't say anything about that. But what was on there just before they took it down was what Bill was alluding to earlier, Forcequake. They reduced its damage, and instead of a 6-second channel, they've now halved the duration of the channel, and obviously reduced the amount of force it consumes by half as well.
Okay.
And it no longer snares targets who are damaged by it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I suppose does it still do the knockdown on weak targets and so on?
It does. It does still affect weak and standard.
That'll still be helpful for leveling purposes then, mostly, but
This
still,
seems to be a
the snare was
PvP
nice.
change, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
'Cause
As well as what Bill said, take it out of the single target rotation for TK and Lightning.
Right. Well, why does this take it out of the rotation for TK?
Because they reduce the damage.
Right, but
I mean, the only reason you're using it is because it's doing sufficient damage that it's better than casting whatever else you would have been casting.
okay. So it has nothing to do with the duration. It's just the damage.
Correct.
Also,
That's
tick
just
is
something else.
Well, the duration affects it because it was using a proc to boost its damage even further. And so
so-
they were getting automatic crits on it
Gotcha.
for a
Right.
full 6-second channel.
Right.
instead
So-
of for the 3-second.
Now yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, good point.
So that was that typical Sage Sorcerer one where you pop it and then you usually use like TK Lightning or whatever, and then in this case you could use Force Storm and also get the same effect.
Panic
Okay.
not, though. As far as we know, they're still uninterruptible by anyone except Powertex. So
Oh, they haven't fixed
life
that
is
yet.
good.
Okay.
Yeah, apparently not. No mention of it anyway.
All right.
All right, so that is now closed, the PTS. Next, lore sets. We had a post by a guy named David Starts, who is a temporary assistant designer. Been working at BioWare since September last year. First post from him, or first or second post. And he just was talking about lore sets. And he says we haven't forgotten them, and realize that many of you enjoy them, and they do have plans to introduce more. I'll link to the tour-fashion.com list of lore sets. There's plenty of them. These are drawn from like KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic, and comics and other things like that, even novels.
Okay.
So that's where all the lore sets are from. So anyway, more are coming. Bright Blue Eyes. This particular character customization in the character designer has been kind of removed. Apparently it was broken. So they've taken it off the cartel market, and you can no longer get it. If you already owned it, it will come back. But at the moment, Bright Blue Eyes is effectively disabled until they can work out what's going on. It may only be affecting players with the male, who are actually male rather than female, or characters who are only male rather than female.
Actually, it says female rather than male, but
Sorry. This may only be affecting female characters, not male, but they may have just taken it out completely.
okay.
And obviously they'll let us know when it's back. Now, kind of bigger news, if you're into ranked PvP, the Season 4 rewards have been announced. So, let's start with the big one. Baron Deathmark's Swashbuckling Cutter mount. Cutter is in kind of ship. So it's obviously a speeder mount. Gotta say, it's kind of impressive. Looks like you are sort of sitting up in a chair that's on the top of it. It's quite intricate. It's got a little sail on it. I like to see someone actually riding in it just to see what it actually looks like. But
That is pretty cool.
amazing.
Yeah.
Now, the other rewards, they've got a little table now. There's actually been a bit of a change in that there are black-silver striated color crystals in a lockbox, so you get 2 of each of the different stats for that particular color crystal. apparently they're going to keep this box season to season, so it'll be in season 5 as well. So if you don't get it this time, you will get it next time. But the big change this time is that it is a reward at the bottom tier, the first tier, the bronze tier, but only in group. Now, all the higher tiers above that, the tier 2 and tier 1, or however they actually do it, the second highest and the highest tier will also get it, and you can get that from solo and group. But for the bottom tier, the color crystals will only be for the group if you get the appropriate rating group. Now, the reason for that, as Alex Modney explained, was that too many people were just sort of going in, winning their 10 matches just to get the color crystals. So, as was in solo. This way, you actually have to work at it, at least some. Now, as we talked about previously, they have added the floor rating, so you do need to have a rating of at least 1,000. 1,000. So
highest earned. So yeah.
Highest earned during the season. So as long as you've ticked above that at some point. So I guess if you went in, you start at roughly 1,200 from memory. You lose 10 matches. Will that put you below 1,000?
I assume it will.
Probably. Yeah, or maybe. Yeah, okay, it will. And you've got to work up. You've got to win at least a little bit to actually get up there. Okay. So, bottom tier is 1,000 to 1,349. Next one is 1,350 to 1,624. And then 1,625 and above is the highest tier. And the titles, let's see, what have they got? Swashbuckler for bronze, the Dauntless for silver, and the Infamous for gold of the 3 tiers. Gold obviously gets the mount, and what they've done this time is at the gold level, you get all of the rewards from the silver and the bronze. At the silver level, you get all the rewards from the bronze. So that's apparently changed from last time. So if you don't like the gold trophy, you'll have the silver and the bronze trophy as well. If it doesn't match the color in your stronghold or whatever.
And yeah, and for those who are really liking the looks of those weapons, that's the silver level. So you need to get, what is it, 12? What was the number again for silver?
1350 to
1350.
1624, 1625 and above for the gold. Now, silver also get the weapons, obviously silver and gold will get the swashbuckling weapon set lockbox, which will have all of the weapon types in that. And of course, for the top 96 players in the top 3 in each advanced class, they will get a special title. And that title this time is the Dread, insert class name, insert character name. So like the Dread Shadow Bill. Say.
Wow. Okay.
So that's the way of doing it this time. Now, there was just a bit more stuff on win trading and just say someone did the win trading right at the end, would they still be caught? And Musco basically said yes. And encourages people, if you actually suspect someone of win trading or doing anything nefarious, please contact BioWare privately via, PM on the forums. Would probably be as effective as anything else. Sent it to Musco, and he'll make sure it gets to the right place.
Right.
So reporting in game should work as well. Okay. What do you think of the rewards? Enough to make you do ranked PvP?
It's tempting to me. I'm only, it's like right now is not good for me because I'm working on getting my character switched over, for operations and stuff. This is, not a great time for me to be trying to get up to a ranked sort of level. But I might give it a whirl anyway. We'll see. I might pick a character and just kind of go for it. We'll see. I really like those weapons as well, especially the lightsabers with the cool sword type hilts.
Yeah, agreed. So the season will, in theory, end with game update 3.2, and we don't know exactly when that is coming. I believe it was supposed to be roughly April 28th.
Okay.
But we'll see. I'm sure they may talk about that in foreshadowing live stream coming this week. All right, next. Community Cantina in Anaheim in conjunction with Star Wars Celebration, which is going to be huge this year for all kinds of reasons.
Yep.
So, yeah, lucky you, Bill. We will expect a full report. That'd be awesome. Lots of pictures. And just remember, we talked about this last week, every attendee will also be receiving an Anaheim exclusive print-away congregate vehicle code. Now, Eric Musco confirmed that they've got no plans to introduce any of those Canteen exclusive items to the cartel market. But that being said, they are going to make those mounts available in some other way. So people who can't get to the Cantina, say those of us in, Australia, will actually be able to have a chance to get them. Presumably be some sort of draw or lottery or something.
Okay.
Or just watch the live stream of it, or who knows. Speaking of live streams, on Friday this week, we finally get the live stream that will be announcing the news that was supposed to be revealed at the Community Cantina that was cancelled, the one that was in Boston,
Right.
the snow thing. It will be 3 to 4 p.m. Central Daylight Time on Friday, that's March 20. And it will be on Twitch, of course, twitch.tv/SWOTOR. It will feature Bruce McLean, Michael Backus, and Eric Musco. What they're going to talk about is the story coming to Ziost, which we knew was coming, and other things that are going to be in-game update 3.2. He emphasizes no spoilers, though we really do want to know what this outfit designer is all about, because we've heard nothing about it. So hopefully there'll be a big reveal about that. Now, if you're curious...
Not necessarily.
Well, not necessarily, no. They might just talk about story, but that is a big feature in 3.2, and as far as I know, there aren't any other big features, so
Okay.
that'd be nice.
Sounds good.
In case you're curious who Michael Backus is, he's actually worked on SWOTOR since January 2008, so he's an old hand. He's a lead designer on the team. So
Right.
Bruce McLean, who's their basically producer guy, Michael Backus, and Eric Musco. And as a bit of a teaser, Charles Boyd, who's a writer on the SWOTOR team, tweeted that, "Great first day in LA, awesome returning talent, and some amazing new folks in roles I can't wait to talk about later this year." Now, this is the recording of voices
That's right.
for SWOTOR. So they are back in the studio, they are recording new dialogue. Clearly there is new story written, they're doing the voices for it. It could be for Ziost or could be future content beyond that. So
Right.
amazing new folks in roles I can't wait to talk about. Cool.
Always good.
So,
That's got to be a huge undertaking. I mean, even for, because there's every class, there's all the new people, whoever's in the new, if they do an operation, whoever's in the operation, yeah. So it's a pretty big undertaking.
yes,
Very
indeed.
exciting.
All right. Next, Star Wars Battlefront, the game coming from DICE, expected summer this year, towards the end of the year. There are rumors that it will be actually demoed at Star Wars Celebration because EA, Electronic Arts, is listed as an exhibitor at Star Wars Celebration, but there's not really much else they can exhibit, unless they're exhibiting SWOTOR. I mean, stranger things have happened, but it seems a bit unlikely. But
Right.
yeah, maybe they will actually have Battlefront on show for the first time, actually see some gameplay to the general public, as opposed to those investor guys who gave the standing ovation for it that we talked about last week. So may give us our
Alright.
first look. Now, kind of sad news for the SWOTOR community, sort of. Torhead is closing. Now, we've mentioned previously Ask Mr. Robot's SWOTOR report was removed, and now Torhead, who's affiliated with Wowhead and the other sites like that, is also closing. The announcement from Amy Lanham, who's the content manager at the ZAM Network, said, "It's with a heavy heart I have to announce we'll be closing down Torhead. A recent analysis of our sites has shown that Torhead's traffic doesn't justify the work it needs to keep it as a quality site. And they're going to close it sometime after 19 March. Well, of course, firstly, they've been really slack about updating it, so why would anyone go there? I mean, Torhead has been an excellent resource, at least earlier, and there isn't really anything to kind of step into its place unless the guys at TorCommunity.com do follow through with what they've been kind of talking about doing. So yeah, no more Torhead.
Oh boy, yeah, that was the big one for a long time. So
Yeah.
we'll have to keep our eyes out for some other good site just for all the basic stuff that Torhead always did. I mean, if you just wanted a general idea of what an ability was or what it did, then you'd kind of go there. It's kind of like, just distraction. Which class has distraction again? You could type it in and
Exactly.
boom.
Well, hopefully,
got it.
if Tor Community and Squirtle Miner / Potato do manage to produce something like that, that's equivalent, that'd be great. But in the meantime, it does leave a little bit of a vacuum. All right, let's step outside Squirtle into general Star Wars. Talk about movie news. Now, this is kind of cool. Well, firstly, Star Wars Episode 8, obviously the sequel to Episode 7, which is coming out December 18 this year, directed by J.J. Abrams.
And is not one of those standalone movies either that they've been
Indeed.
talking about.
This is the continuation from The Force Awakens. It will be released on 26 May 2017, so more or less a year and a half after Episode 7. And the release date is 40 years and a day after the release of the original Star Wars, A New Hope. Of course, it wasn't A New Hope originally, but the original Star Wars movie in 1977.
Right.
40 years.
Well, Star Wars movies have always traditionally been released on Memorial Day, so actually this upcoming one is actually unusual in that it's being released at the end of the year.
Right. Okay. It's going to be directed by a guy named Ryan Johnson, who directed Looper, Brick, and The Brothers Bloom. I've only seen Looper, can't comment on the others. And J.J. Abrams is an executive producer. He is not directing. Which is interesting, though there are rumors already that he will be back for Episode 9, whenever that will be.
Right. Well, I'm sure it's, crazy trying to get one of these episodes out. It makes sense to have someone else take the reins for a while. And certainly that's pretty typical. I mean, not just for previous Star Wars movies, which have also had different directors, but also a lot of the other major sort of fantasy ones have had different directors for different movies. Harry Potter, I'm thinking of especially.
Indeed.
Although there's exceptions. I mean, Peter Jackson did all the Lord of the Rings stuff, so it can go either way. But as long as they get good directors, hopefully that'll override the fact, whether it's the same guy each time.
Well, it's not like Star Wars is known for a lack of having central control over storylines. So I'm sure they'll maintain their iron oversight of it.
Certainly the story group will make sure the continuity is good. But anyway. Alright, and speaking of standalone movies, Rogue One is the name of the first standalone movie. It will be directed by Gareth Edwards, who did Monsters and Godzilla. It will be written by Chris Waits, who wrote Cinderella, About a Boy and Ants. And the only cast member we know about so far is a lady by the name of Felicity Jones, who starred in The Theory of Everything. Apparently the idea for it, the story idea, comes from a visual effects supervisor and chief creative officer at Industrial Light and Magic, which is Lucasfilm's special effects guys, well known for the amazing stuff they do. He'll be an executive producer on it. Filming begins in summer this year, at the same time that Force Awakens comes out, and it will be released a year later on the 16th of December 2016. And they've also revealed that it will be the first Star Wars movie whose score wasn't created by John Williams. It's going to be done by a French composer, a guy by the name of Alexandre Desplat, who won the Oscar for Best Original Score in 2015. So he's pretty well known. He actually scored the last two Harry Potter films, both parts of the Deathly Hallows.
Right. And, Harry Potter is another example of sort of the same thing. John Williams did the first movie, but then other scorers took over after that. And there's still a lot of through lines that are, throughout the Harry Potter movies, obviously. You can still hear the Hedwig theme and so on. But yeah, so I'm sure I'm sure he'll do fine. Of course we've got SWTOR as an example. It's very Star Wars sounding music, but a lot of it is original compositions that are not John Williams.
But stick with the theme. I assume he would do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the name goes, Rogue One, we've got no hint as to the plot. Now, you may think this is something to do with Rogue Squadron, which featured heavily in the Expanded Universe books, but of course none of that happened. That's all now Legends fanfic. So, in fact, when you look at the movies, the only reference to rogues is the rogue group in Empire Strikes Back, when they're in their snowspeeders. And that's when Luke was Red 5 and Wedge Antilles was... Sorry, that's when Luke Skywalker was Rogue Leader and Wedge Antilles was Rogue 3. In Return of the Jedi, in that final battle when they attacked the second Death Star to take it out, Wedge was Red Leader, so in Red Squadron. So no rogues in Return of the Jedi. So the only rogue we actually have in the original 3 movies was in Empire Strikes Back. So is Rogue One that, or Rogue something completely unrelated? Who knows?
Okay.
Novels. Now, Star Wars Aftermath is one of the novels that's coming out, the 20 books and comics and stuff we mentioned last week. This one is the first part of a trilogy, apparently. And so its synopsis is worth reading. The second Death Star has been destroyed. Rumors are flying that the Emperor and his enforcer, Darth Vader, are dead. A new government is forming to replace the Empire, but the galaxy is a big place, and the fallout of this cataclysm will affect different worlds in different ways. Does everyone accept the fall of Imperial rule? Has everyone even heard the life-altering news? What rushes in to fill the vacuum the Empire has left, and who will try to stop them? Those are some of the themes we'll be exploring in Aftermath. So, yeah. This is canon, obviously, as are all the novels and etc. they're producing, and this effectively will fill the story gap between the end of Return of the Jedi and the beginning of The Force Awakens. So I would consider this probably essential reading if you want to know what the hell's going on. I'm sure they'll fill it in somehow in the movie itself or some sort of prologue or whatever, but this is a whole lot of useful background. Anyway, that is coming out soon.
Right. This one interests me even more than the one you read about Luke. Partly because of the timeline it's doing it,
exactly.
Sort of afterward, continuing it on. I know in the previous extensions of lore that are now, whatever it's called. That Endor had some real problems because the Death Star exploded over it. There's a lot of shrapnel raining down on them and causing forest fires and all sorts of nasty stuff going on. I don't think that's actually what this is going to be about Endor at all, but they mention it a couple times, so it kind of made me think of that whole thing.
Well, It is available for pre-order now. It will come out in September. Okay. So, why not? It was authored by Chuck Wendig, who I've never heard of, but I'm sure he's good. Lastly, in the news, this one's been doing the rounds of Star Wars news. Some guys at Auburn University, which is apparently in Alabama, have named a fish, which is it's a sucker mouth armored catfish. The only reason we're talking about this is he called it Hecoltia gridoi, deliberately named after Greedo, who was the guy that, Han shot first. He's a guy that Han shot first. And the resemblance between Greedo and this catfish is kind of stunning. I'll include the image. So, yeah. Yep. So Star Wars fans do become who work in science as well, clearly. All right, so let's just talk community briefly. Snave was on last week. He is organising, as he talked about, a simulation of 8-man ranked. He wants to do it on the PTS. He wants to get people into groups and then queue together. And he said something about Musco arranging things so only Hutball would be available. And even though the PTS has been taken down, and it won't be this weekend, which is he intended to do it this Saturday. It will probably be the following Saturday if the PTS is back up. And only Hutball will spawn. Seems like a nightmare to me, but if you're into that kind of thing, make sure you've got the PTS up to date so you can participate. I did want to shout out to Casual Core Radio, another general gaming podcast focusing on MMOs, from Drew, also known as Geldarian, and Joe Foreign. It's a great show. I would highly recommend anyone interested in just general MMO news to tune into that. We had a tweet from Warchild, who's one of our listeners. He said, just an idea to freshen the podcast. What about having a fan on as a special guest? Spencer thought this was a great idea. Hollow, I think this Dayphine said the same thing. So yes, we will be doing something along those lines. I'm thinking we'll arrange some sort of mini audition process just to make sure that you can do the technical side of it. I will tweet details about that when it becomes available. If you're interested, email OotiniCast@gmail.com. That's your first step. If you do want to be on the show, we're reasonably discriminating, but I don't see any reason why most people couldn't get on. Something like that. Now, Andrew, something you blogged about a while ago was this flowchart for listing stuff on the GTN. I was going to just reference people to it because I thought it was excellent. You just want to quickly talk through what it is?
Sure. So one of the things that I was getting a lot of questions about was just kind of the basic framework for when people are going to sell something on the GTN, similar to the experience that Bill was talking about in terms of the frustration of listing something and then it coming back to you, and then listing something and it coming back to you. So there was a lot of interest in some sort of resource, especially for Bill's is obviously out of discriminating, really knowing what he wants to sell something for. But it's even more frustrating if you're a less experienced GTN seller and you just can't figure out what someone will buy stuff for. So I tried to keep it simple and keep it broad, but the idea was to distinguish between, why are you selling it, how soon do you need the money, and based on those criteria, kind of give people some pointers on what a good price would probably be for them.
Excellent. Excellent.
Cool.
Yeah, very nice work, sir. All
Thank
right. And finally, Utini Rage this week. This is from Sevek of Beggar and Colony. He did let me know that I didn't have to run them back to back, but I just thought it was kind of cool to do that. This week is his Utini Rage clip is Anger. So we'll look forward to that in the outro. Anyway, that's the news. Anyway, what do I usually say? How could I have forgotten that? Anyway, that's the news.
All right, that'll bring us to the Force Feedback, where we read out your tweets and emails. And chat room, if you have any questions to ask, we'll be gathering them now to ask once we're done with the feedback. First, let me do a shout out to the chat room, since I haven't done that yet this show. Fiona is here. Cap Slapshot 27, Darth Bundle Fly, Eric Z, Force Chuckle, Ganglertron, Gas Guy, Gahana, Hellion, Lito, Mark _Swotor, Random Name, Palais, Pez, Rub, Swotor Addict, and Swotor Economics, of course. Andrew
You did
is
mention
here as well.
Fiona. You did miss Fiona, did you?
Did I? Who did I miss?
And Fiona.
Fiona. Okay, sorry, Fiona. Let's see, and in the OotiniCast Twitch one, I see Grotto, Refilled 9, Beware 2 is there. There we go. All right, so starting off with the tweets, Force Chuckle wrote, at OotiniCast, follow Friday, charming to the last. Thank you, Force Chuckle. And let's see, Greg tweeted, really enjoyed this week's show. First time I've heard Snave, and I think we need a repeat performance.
Yes, we will be bringing Snave back on at some point. However, you'll notice in shows going forward that we're returning to our original formula of Chill and myself always being on and just having rotating guests. So, but yeah, no reason not to bring Snave back.
Absolutely. All right. Rosie, also known as Mariah, while not a PvPer, I enjoyed Snave as a guest on OotiniCast 195. All right. Good to know.
Oh, man. Let's do it again. Let's have one more.
Ola wrote, Snave, listening to you talk about controlling players through fear on OotiniCast was so very Tarkin. You just role-played operative.
Indeed. Yeah.
Yeah, and Galen wrote, when are we going to hear Snave in the new Operative War Room podcast? The regular show was awesome, and we need more.
That is whenever Turg gets that going. He is working with a couple of people by the name of Jacket and Zani. So, yeah, they should have something pretty amazing coming out. And, yes, we will bring specialists on like Snave.
Yes,
and they cover that particular advanced class.
Right. Yeah, Turg's very aware that Snave is an operative. All right. Sashari wrote, listening to this week's OotiniCast, I really hope we don't start seeing crossguard lightsabers in SWTOR.
And I responded, somehow I suspect it's inevitable, along with ball droid mini-pets. And then Kat responded, oh, come on, a ball droid mini-pet wouldn't be so bad. Now, the ball droid, it appeared in the Force Awakens teaser trailer, and it's really cool, and I actually... She's right. Why the hell not have a ball droid mini pet? I think that's fantastic. Crossguard lightsaber may not be your cup of tea, but some people may like it and pay cartel coins for it.
All right. Hip, and is this the Hypnotoad?
It is the Hypnotoad, yes.
Wow. Haven't heard from him in an age. Hypnotoad, Hip wrote, my Mac just died and I'm getting my PC back. I think it's time I jump back in to see what's changed.
He won't recognize the game. Now, I don't know if this will happen, but if it does, and he does start playing for a while, we'll have to get him back on the show.
Absolutely. I missed him. Chong wrote, another fan. He was clearly talking about me on the show. And he has a little screenshot of someone whispering to him, nice podcast you guys do. Chong wrote back to him, thanks, Tio and Chill work hard to keep it going. And then Genda wrote again, true, but the guests are pretty good as well.
Wow,
that's true.
Chong has got a few fans, it seems. Assuming they're talking about it.
He was probably talking about Snave.
Possibly. And that was Genda of the Epidemic Guild on Empire side of the Harbinger.
Very nice. And let's see, Chong wrote, is anyone else seeing these holotree decorations bugged? The base is flipped onto its side and is clipping through the ground.
I didn't notice this myself. This is on the fleet. The holotree is on the fleet. Imp fleet.
I see. Oh yeah, where those imp trees are. That is weird. Yeah.
Oops.
That's definitely... something changed.
Mm.
Someone changed the value, I guess. Yeah, that should be fixable. Let's see. JB of Ewacalypse Now Guild. Ops 2 team now is 5 of 10 in hard mode. Death to the Underjerker.
Congratulations.
Very nice. Wow,
More
hard mode
reports
Underlicker. That's what we're working on. Yep, hard stuff.
It'll be a while before we're up to Underlurker on hard mode, that's for sure. Well, maybe. We'll see.
And Greg also wrote, Revan, get up here, you coward! Hashtag random rioters. He has a picture of them doing the Revan fight, only Revan is like on the wrong level of the operation.
Somehow he fell down and it's just, or it didn't come up with them. That is not right. Something went terribly wrong. Yeah, I don't think that ended well for anyone concerned.
Okay. AJ wrote, I just saw a picture of a Jawa writing with the caption JavaScript. I assume your site uses JavaScript too.
Oh yeah, we got JavaScript all over it. I'm a big JavaScript fan myself. And I did find the picture he was talking about, which is kind of cool. I'll include that in the show notes. And I don't assume he's not talking about the Java-Script Guild, German Guild. So, which I found when I was just doing some searches. So if you're in the EU and you can speak German, java-script.de, have a look. Might be a guild worth joining.
Okay. Did you want me to read the bit here to you?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. Rosie, a.k.a. Mariah. Subject, I must be a hardcore raider. Hello, Utini crew. To start, I would like to preface the following by stating that I'm well aware that I belong to one extreme fringe of the game's player base. I derive my enjoyment almost exclusively by group PvE content. With recent comments from the solo-centric players, I wanted to put in my 2 cents. I currently find myself in a very familiar and not very comfortable place in the game. My small band of friends, who meet 2 hours twice a week, seem to be already tired of the Shadow of Revan operations. Like many groups, we find ourselves a few bosses into both operations on hard mode. Within weeks of launch, we had both story mode runs on farm, blasting through one of them in a 2-hour session, despite bugs. That left us a full day to bash our heads on hard mode for the second night. While the hard modes provide a significant challenge, they are similar enough to the story mode fights that boredom and burnout are a significant issue. From feedback on Twitter and emails on the show, there seems to be a strong consensus that story mode operations should be tuned such that a pug can walk in without voice comms, and more often than not, some of the group not up to speed. I see. Okay, let me set that one again.
On the encounters, yeah.
Yeah. There seems to be a strong consensus that story mode operations should be tuned so that a pug can walk in without voice comms, and more often than not being up to speed on the encounters. Coupled with lack of gear grind, that certainly makes story mode operations very accessible, but at the cost of making them almost trivial. In my perfect game, players would need to do some story mode and hard mode in-game flashpoints for drops to be viable for the story mode operations. This would extend the endgame PvE content life, as well as making the operations feel more epic than they currently do. With all the class stories providing great single-player experience, am I really being unfair to want something to work for in the endgame? /salute, Rose, the filthy elitist hardcore raider.
I kind of agree with her. I mean, that's the way it's worked previously. You actually have to get gear from the hard mode flashpoints to actually do even the story mode operations. I mean, why not?
Right.
And there is now no reason to do the hard mode flashpoints. There's nothing you want from them that you can't easily farm from story mode operations. So
I think it was simply because there just weren't that many flashpoints to put gear into?
There were 4, and they've added 2. So throughout those 4, why not?
Yeah. Right, but it wasn't really ready for launch that way, though. Was it? I mean, they added the hard mode stuff later, didn't they? Did they not?
No, the hard mode did launch with Shadow of Revan.
Okay. So you feel they should have put the gear in there instead, basically?
Or have a higher tier of gear, like 192s from the flashpoints, 192s from the flashpoints, and then some higher tier from the story mode operations, and then a higher yet tier from the hard mode operations. So the story mode, yes, so it's actually a progression. At the moment, you just skip the flashpoints completely. You could consider it an alternate thing to do if you don't raid, which is actually, you could look at it that way as well. But if you raid, there's just no reason. You can just skip the flashpoints completely.
Right. And even ignoring the legacy smuggling, I would be pretty much at least ready for story mode operation, even without legacy smuggling, just from crafting and
basic comms. Basic comms, you can
so
outfit yourself in complete 186s. So
yeah,
you're ready for story mode operations at that point. Yeah.
Right.
It feels like they really condensed it too much this time around with the gearing. Between how much stuff they gave you when you did the solo versions of the Forged Alliances arc, and then just the one point where they gave you like 300 basic comms all of a sudden for completing a part of the arc. It just felt like by the second or third alt that I brought through, I just had all of this extra stuff that I just didn't even need, which is so far the opposite direction from where it feels like it should have been.
Yeah. I guess they were just a little overgenerous, but unfortunately they removed the incentive to actually do that content. Yeah, well, we'll see what happens next time, but this particular experiment I don't think was particularly successful. I'd love a reason to do those flashpoints, because they're actually pretty solid, but there's just no reason to beyond the challenge, as we've talked about previously.
Yeah, Lito from the chat room is mentioning that the walker mount from the hard mode flashpoint is bind on equip and actually sells for a pretty penny on the GTN.
Sure.
I guess that's one reason to do it. Yeah. Certainly not the kind of reason that you'd need, gear-wise to make that part of that whole chain that we were talking about. It's tricky. at some point, I mean, it definitely feels like you want to get the story out to people, but maybe a little bit later in the process where they do have to do at least some hard mode flashpoints to see the story mode content in the operation. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, and the tricky part is that one or two of the fights, if you're doing all pugs, is actually pretty rough. So you're not necessarily seeing it if you're just doing pure, the pure pug thing, unless you happen to be with like a group of raiders.
Right. I mean, it was like it's been talked about to death almost, but why everything in the expansion was so easy with the Jesus droid, everything part of the leveling process you could sleep through. There was no challenges. You didn't even have to use interrupts. I mean, you could just blind your way through it.
That's true.
And then you get to tacticals, and they were easy. And then you get to the hard modes, and it was like exponential growth.
Brutal, yeah.
Yep.
And then you get into the story mode operations, and between the walkers and Underlurker and Bulo, pugs have trouble. It's mechanic heavy. That's what I went back to. I was looking for a break from tanking because of all the mechanic heavy. I know Chill and I passed up to you and Turg, and we switched to all new content. That's super mechanic heavy on DPS now too. So I didn't avoid anything by switching.
Yep. But I'm actually enjoying the DPS thing, though. I must say, it's nice after tanking for so long. I mean, it goes.
I'm loving the tanking
before
myself.
SWTOR. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with tanking. I enjoyed it a long time, but it's nice to have a number that I can shoot for and try to improve each week and so on.
Yep.
Okay. All right, I reckon we do have time for the Sarlacc Digest. So.
Awesome. And I don't see any special questions in the chat rooms, so let's just go to the Sarlacc Digest. Yeah. All right, that'll bring us to the Sarlacc Digest, where we go over the issues for 1,000 years, or until we run out of time. And Till, you wanted to take the lead on this one?
Indeed. We're going to talk about the potential to add something to SWTOR, which would be purchasable with real money and sellable for in-game currency that would allow you to redeem it for say 30 days of subscription. So nothing like that exists right now. However, there is a heavy precedent for this in prior games. Now, the most well-known one is in EVE Online, who have had something called Plex pilot license extension. For the longest time, it is actually something you purchase for real-world money. Now, the price of it is like $20. It's worth 30 days of game time. And compare their sub. Their sub is basically $15 a month, same as SWTOR and WoW and other games like that. But the Plex is 33% more expensive. So, and the Plex is an item, you can then put it onto their market. Of course, it's an item that you can also lose in EVE because they've got true hardcore. If you get blown up, it's gone.
Right.
Yeah. Somewhat harsh environment, but anyway, that's where the concept started. And then WildStar, for all of its flash in the pan glory, introduced something along the same lines that they called Cred. It pretty much worked exactly the same. Their sub is $15 a month. The Cred itself costs $20. Again, it's only worth 30 days of game time, but you could sell it to other players. Now, they did this via the market-driven. You are able to put it onto their equivalent of the auction house or GTN and to choose whatever price you want, and then players could actually pick it up. Though it's actually a separate standalone market thing, not the actual open auction house. And what sort of prompted this discussion was that WoW introduced their new concept called a WoW token. And we don't yet know how much it costs, so I'd be pretty shocked if it wasn't $20, like all the rest, worth 30 days of game time.
Right,
Now,
so the reason that it costs more than just the regular subscription is because you have the
unclear,
flexibility?
because you can.
That's what I would say.
Yeah, they could
Yeah.
should just charge $15 because it is just equivalent to a month of sub. Exactly,
Right.
there is no difference. But I guess you pay more because you can exchange it for in-game currency.
I see. So
Yeah, I think you're basically paying for that liquidity. Yeah, to use the finance term, you're getting liquidity, whereas with a straight 30-day subscription, it only has the one use.
Now, the way WoW is going to do it with their WoW tokens is a bit different. You can't just choose the price. It's apparently market-driven, but in a market-driven way that they define. In that when you want to put one up, they'll tell you what the price is, and you can't control it. And it will apparently vary based on the market. How that will work in practice, I don't understand. Maybe it's somehow driven by however many are in circulation or something.
Right.
It's kind of weird, but no one else has done it like that. Everyone else has just got a free market system. Hopefully, if SWTOR did it, they would do something like that.
Huh.
Yeah, so, again, all of these things, all of these concepts are you pay real money, extra real money for the sub thing, which you then sell for a player and you get your in-game currency. In our case, that would be credits. So I
Right.
buy my SWTOR token.
And then hopefully get
Put it on the
hopefully
GTN.
get an obscene amount of credits out of it. Hopefully.
Exactly. Well, depending on what the market actually will bear.
And
Now,
wouldn't-
someone like Bill, who has an infinite number of credits, would, if he was able to buy these up,
Right.
never have to buy any real money again. So
Yeah. Well, that works fine right now, but if he's actually free to play, he actually has a hard limit on a cap on his credits.
Exactly. That's the big downside that I see in SWTOR, because I would see it, honestly, in real terms right now, it would be valued somewhere between 2.5 and 3 million credits.
okay.
Right.
That's about where it would fall, depending on it. So if I'm capped at 350K, there's no way for me to buy it.
Unless you use the escrow.
You have to use the escrow, but that's pricey.
It is, of course, once you get one of these things, as long as you buy another one before your 30 days of sub time run out, it's equivalent to being subscribed, so the caps will be removed.
So the caps would be removed. So you'd have to buy it the one time, and then you just have to make sure to stay subscribed, or keep at least one of those in your bank, I guess.
And I think that's actually one of the
Oh. Hang on, Andrew. We can't hear you in a sec.
He's got to wait for his dog to stop barking.
Right.
He's still muted. Still
You're
muted.
muted. You're muted.
There we go.
Okay.
There you
He's not done now.
All right, just hold your thought. Hold your thought.
Unfortunately, his sister lives across the street from us, so she probably went outside, and so now he would like to.
Right.
Let's see.
Okay, I think he's satisfied now.
Go for it.
So I think actually one of the things that would work best about it in terms of the target audience, I don't know that the free-to-play player would be their target audience, or that they would necessarily see that as a negative. I think of it more, as Bill being the target audience, someone who's been a long-term subscriber and who has a lot of credits and would love to be able to save some real-world money, use in-game credits to maintain a subscription that's already been going on. And the other side of the equation is that they're not going to lose any money. As Tio described at the beginning, they could actually probably make more money, because there's also plenty of people out there who want to spend real-world money to convert it to in-game credits to then use for what they want to do in-game.
Yeah.
So you're really
in a
just
less
aligning...
in a less risky way than buying a cartel market item and then hoping that you pick the right one with the right demand at the right time.
Now,
Exactly.
we should mention that Andrew has done this long blog post laying out the various arguments about this, which we'll link to, of course. So, Andrew, did you want to talk through it? I mean, as you're going?
Sure. Yeah, I can. I've actually, and I've thought of a few additional things since I wrote it up too. One of them being what you touched on with what WoW's talked about, but not actually described in depth in terms of having some sort of price control on the system. And I think if I'm thinking through it the same way that they are, it's almost a mechanism for what Chill was just talking about in terms of providing some sort of certainty to the person purchasing the $20 chip and saying that you're going to be able to get back a certain amount of in-game credits, either as a floor or just as a standard rate. And the way I was thinking through it was you could even have it be outside of the standard GTN and just have maybe like a fleet vendor that sells to, if Bill is the buyer, he would go to the vendor, but that the supply at the vendor was limited based on the amount of people who had sold the token to the vendor. To have some sort of non-GTN intermediary that would be able to control that price that you could purchase them for. I could see something like that working well.
Right.
Yeah. I at first I really knee-jerked at WoW's approach, going, well, that seems excessive for them to be so controlling. And I like Eve's, hey, let the market free hand decide. But it does leave it open to manipulation, and we see that now within SWTOR on the hypercrates especially. It's been talked about before of gold farmers a lot of times are buying hypercrates, going on the GTN and listing them obscenely low prices and driving down the prices of these things, because they'll go out and list 30 of them for $2.5 million when they normally sell between 3.5 to 5. So it would be no different. Now, hopefully, you're pushing those people out anyway, because this is giving everyone a legitimate source of buying where you're not going to get banned, because we'll pretend BioWare hands out bans all the time. But it could happen, and it's at least legitimizing the process. So I do agree that I think WoW's getting it right, actually, in controlling.
And it gives them a way, if they do want to try and, have extra policing of that system for exchanging between real-world currency, subscription time, and in-game credits, if they are controlling that mechanism that it flows through, it'd be very easy for them to track who is selling the tokens to the vendor, who's buying them from the vendor. In the same way that having a singular token helps, it gives them one item with one point of sale and makes it a very contained system to be able to track who is involved in it if they do start to see manipulation or any sort of activity that they want to look into.
That's true.
And if something goes wrong, you just have one thing to shut down, too.
That makes sense, too. So, are there any downsides to this? Why wouldn't you introduce this kind of thing?
I think that there's a reason that you don't see it. You typically don't see it early in a game's development cycle, because it fits a pretty specific point in the development of a game, and I think it makes sense.
That makes sense.
For SWTOR to start looking at it, where you need to have a developed player base that's been subscribing for a long time, that's built up a lot of in-game credits. Because
I hoarded a lot.
It's to me it's a retention tool more than anything, because eventually, as as someone like Bill alluded to earlier, at some point you start to question whether or not it's worth it to keep subscribing, because if there's not new content to keep you interested, and you start to have some times where you're just losing interest, you're going to be much more likely to stay subscribed and to eventually come back to the game if they give you a way to save some real-world money, even though they're still going to make their real-world money because there's someone else willing to pay it, but give you a legitimate way to make that conversion. I think everyone comes out ahead. It's hard for me to envision why you wouldn't do it at this stage. I understand why you wouldn't do it at launch, but once a game has been out at least a few years, no one's been able to tell me yet why they wouldn't do it. And WoW did a really great job of already laying out the case on their website. Yeah. So it almost kind of is a free win for SWTOR, because you hardly even have to make the case. All you have to do is put it out there, and someone else has already sold it to the broader MMO gaming public for you.
Yeah.
Right.
It'd be interesting to know what the arguments are against, if there are any. I can't think of any. It's only if you would consider this pay to win. I mean, the fact that you can actually sell cartel markets, buy them with real money, cartel market items, sell them for credit. We've already got the mechanism.
We've
This
already
is
got
just
that.
a little
Right,
more
that's-
direct. That's all.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I think that is one of the trade-offs, though, of exactly what you alluded to. I agree. I'm probably the target audience, and as you pointed out, I would start doing it immediately.
of course.
But it would, because people already are using the mechanism of hypercrates, of other items, and using those as the proxy. So would it end up hurting the sales of those on the cartel market?
Right. All of a sudden, no one's buying
Because-
hypercrates and putting them on the GTN because there's no
Yeah.
need to, because they can use the 30-day token.
Right.
Interesting. Right. So that is
I think
that is a
that-
point.
It certainly adds a dynamic to it, but I think that there's still that big disjunction in the market where the hypercrates can certainly help with the question of real dollars to credits in the game. But I think that the proliferation of gold sellers, especially since Shadow of Revan launched, tells me that there's a lot more there than what the cartel market is able to satiate. That if the cartel market was already completely filling that need and it was just going to cannibalize its own sales that already exist on the cartel market,
Right.
I have a hard time believing that just based on the number of people that are constantly sending me spam messages in game to buy gold.
And yeah, this seems like it would be also a good way to pull people back who played maybe for the first year of SWTOR but then dropped out at some point. I mean, I played WoW for a long time. I'm sure I've got a lot of gold on characters that I haven't thought about for 5 years. And I'm if I had the time right now, because if I wasn't playing SWTOR and I was looking for an MMO, I would probably be among those people who would be looking back on those accounts and saying, hey, do I have enough gold to, sort of re-up an account this way? And it's a potential way to get me back in that game. But it doesn't work in my case because I'm doing the SWTOR thing. But
Yeah.
it certainly
But it could apply to
mechanism
former
doesn't
SWTOR
work.
players if they did add
Yeah,
something.
exactly.
Yeah.
There's got to be
It
SWTOR
could.
players who have the same thing.
There is another downside that I see of it, possibility of it actually being inflationary again. Credits are super stupid easy to get in this game. There are multiple ways. There are multiple front page items on Reddit right now about how to make 500K an hour. There's so many different ways. So if I say it's worth 3 million credits, that's 6 hours of farming, and I've got a month of subscription.
Right.
I don't necessarily have a reason to do that right now, but all of a sudden 300 people decide, well, I can go out and do this for 600 hours, and that just created a whole lot more credits in the economy that are being passed to another person. It triggers an inflationary spiral.
Which would wouldn't it just force up the price of the SWTOR token?
And
To a
everything
lot.
else, yes.
And
everything else,
potentially
actually.
everything.
Because there's so many more credits in the economy, which are relatively easy to get, yeah.
And that's where maybe WoW's onto something with the centralized,
Right.
or however it is that they're going to try to have some sort of price control. That's another reason why you would consider that is if you're worried about that inflationary situation. It's hard to this would be playing a very dangerous PR game, but I could see a scenario where if you're going to sell it for real world dollars, say $20, and then the person who has the token then can go in game and sell that token to an NPC vendor for a set price, say 3 million credits in the Star Wars example. Do they necessarily have to turn around and sell it for the same price, for the same amount of credits that they gave the person who bought it for real world dollars? if you cannot lose that PR situation, which I think is tricky, yeah, that's a dangerous game to play if you're gonna then have a margin there. But if you can find a way to do that, then you can help with that inflationary side. Or the other question, I don't know if this is possible within the way that the game is structured, but if they have the ability to have variable GTN commission rates within the structure, if that's something that they could pull off, then that would give them a way to create an additional credit sink to the purchase that they could use to try and help with that a little bit. So there's things they could do, but it would be a headache. There's effort there that might be the biggest argument against it, is that given the classic story of what economics is, taking limited resources and figuring out how to allocate them. If you are BioWare, is this something that makes sense to allocate some of your limited development resources? Not saying that limited in a bad way, just saying non-infinite. That what are you sacrificing in order to get a mechanic like this into the game? Right. And that's where it may not make sense anytime in the next 6 to 12 months, because as evidenced by reports of them doing voice recording, they probably have more important things to be working on.
Sure.
But when there's a slow period, it might give them something, if they get everything else that they want to do completed and have some extra hours and manpower, it might be something that they could put a somewhat small amount of time and effort into and be able to bring it to market fairly quickly.
In a way, they won't muck everything up. Because inflation has been pretty much non-existent in SWTOR, you would say?
Well, I wouldn't say that. It's funny because it is existent, but it's because people are hoarding. You have more and more people every day that are 100 millionaires, that are 300 millionaires, that are billionaires, because there's not much to spend the money on, but as soon as there is, it flows to the market really easily. I would suggest now that, realistically, I would suggest to BioWare that every patch going forward, every 0.1 or 0.0.1 patch, they raise the GTN, that commission, by 0.1%, at least for the next 10 to go from 6 to 7%. Slowly, bit by bit. It doesn't need to. The bigger jump they make, the more, again, rubber banding they'll get, and people jumping straight into fleet chat to start instead of it's the mental side of people of trying to avoid the extra 1%. But if they do it smallly over patches, it'll be completely invisible.
No one will notice.
Yeah, that's a big risk that they need to be thinking about it somehow. And it's similar. I talked about it at some point with the Java junk and the different things like that after the initial version of the slot machines. They have the same problem there, where they have a lot of people that have a lot of credits, they have a lot of Java junk, they have a lot of assorted droid parts, and in every mechanic that they introduce going forward, until they can clear those out of people's inventory, they run the risk of an otherwise very good mechanic having issues because of all of that behind-the-scenes, socked-away material that people could instantly bring to bear in a way that they don't anticipate.
All right, final thoughts, guys, and then we'll wrap it up. If any.
I have thousands of Java junks squirreled away.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
I believe it.
The biggest problem with the earlier suggestion of using the legacy storage instead of the mailbox, instantly I thought, well, that requires you to have open space in your legacy storage.
Yeah, good point.
True.
My Java junk's in the way.
Right, and I think the Java junk is a prime example of the squirreling away of, and hoarding, because those are going to remain valuable for some time, So I mean, unless they decide that it's just not going to be, the next tier of stuff, tier 12 stuff, is not going to be added to the Java junk at all. That stuff is going to be valuable for a long time. So, and there's a lot of it out there.
And that's what again, as I'm thinking about unsubscribing and my millions of credits of how to avoid getting those things, escrowed away from me.
Mhm.
I'm squirreling hypercrates now because
Oh.
I can buy them and then I can unpack them into single packs and sell them for $350K a pop and stay right at my limit and have an infinite supply that
Right.
they're not going to really go down in value. They have their spikes and their ebbs and flows when they re-release them and things like that, but they're still going to be worth what they're worth.
Right, especially since they tend to go away and they become unavailable for a long periods of time.
Yep.
All right, let's finish up.
All right, then, that's a show. If you'd like to play with us in the Utini Knights Guild on the Republic side of the Harbinger server, or in our Guild on the Empire side, do a /c join Utini to join the Utini channel. Then ask for the quiz that lets us know you're a fan of the show. You can email questions and comments about the show to OotiniCast@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter using @OotiniCast. You can find contact details for all of us on our website, OotiniCast.com, which includes how to subscribe to us using iTunes, Stitcher, and the rest. We record the show live every Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Go to OotiniCast.com/live to find out how to join in. Our theme song is from Mevio's Music Alley. Check it out at music.mevio.com. That's MEVIO. And thank you to the chat room, and thank you to Bill and Andrew of SWTOR Economics.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next week.
All right, everyone, keep recording. Don't stop recording. Chat room, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
That went longer than I would have liked, but that's okay. It was all good stuff. Anyway, we will see you next week. Same time, same day, all that stuff.